of 13 ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13 ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
Hi there. As we get a little bit closer to the summer season, we want to look back, talk a little bit about schools. As we know, the winter pressing schools into a few more days of class because of what we had to deal with the snow. There has been a battle going on for local school districts around the country, and it has to do with implementing better food choices for kids when they go to lunch and obviously when they go to breakfast. That is a growing market for schools. However, there have been a lot of schools around the country who are saying these new standards that have been set forth by the government are too hard to attain. In fact, a recent article in the New York Post, an opinion piece, saying calling it the headline, the First Lady's food fight debacle. You see Michelle Obama there, the First Lady, Rachel Ray in the background talking about these standards. But the article reading, look out everyone, the nation's school lunch lady, Michelle Obama, is mad. She came out and said this is important. We have to do this. However, there have been school districts across the country saying we can't do this. We need a reprieve. In fact, just this week, the U.S. Agriculture Department allowing some schools to delay adding more whole grains to meals this year, and that is a direct response to criticism from school nutrition officials that the standards were too difficult to put in place. We are so glad to have Joe Shammy. He is with the Sylvania Schools here to talk to us about these standards and what we are seeing implemented. Joe, this fight that has been going on from some school districts, I asked you before we started today, are we making a mountain out of a molehill, or is this really a big deal?
It really is a big deal. You know, students, if you think back to our past when we were younger and when we would eat in schools, we could have pretty much anything we wanted to have. We could eat out of vending machines, we could have deep fried foods, there were ice creams, everything else that you can think of.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, those items went away and you would start to eat healthier and being more conscious of foods. And you know, children go to school and they have to be modeled how to eat, you know, properly, but they're used to eating differently at home.
I want to talk more about the economic standards of all of this. Let's talk about the specifics of what schools have had to implement. The first and foremost thing, more whole grains. In fact, it started out, and we can take a look at the list, more whole grains had to be implemented, whether that be rolls, pasta, so on and so forth. And then there were limitations put on by the government saying there needs to be limits on fats, there needs to be limits on the number of calories, sugar intake, and also sodium, the sodium content in foods. So you look at that list and you see it's like a 2-year window that's put out there for these schools. Attainable in 2 years? Did schools have a legitimate beef, no pun intended, saying we need more time?
It's definitely achievable and attainable. Currently, we have to meet guidelines as far as sodium and fat, saturated fat, and zero trans fats. It is attainable, and it's something that it requires definitely adjustments to be made. Whole grain wheat is definitely the way to go. Beginning next year in the state of Ohio, 51% of the grains served in school have to be whole grain wheat.
Yeah.
And
eventually 100%.
And eventually it will end up being 100%. And sodium targets is a 10-year goal. Sodium targets will come down. We'll be going adding less sodium.
Within the last couple of weeks, you were down in Columbus meeting with other school districts, 300 in fact, talking about these standards that have to be put into place. Just a couple of weeks ago, the USDA said that schools can put off the 2-year requirement to implement these standards on whole grains, specifically if they show cause. That was the big thing. They needed to demonstrate, that they have had significant challenges, whether it be financially implementing this or in preparing the whole grain meals, the pastas. Really tough? I mean, is whole grain that hard of a thing? I know it takes longer sometimes to boil whole grain pasta than it does just your general regular pasta.
Correct. Yeah, there is a challenge for the smaller school districts that would be cooking these items from scratch. it becomes a challenge. If you're a larger district and you get supplied bread in from a vendor, then it's not as big of a deal. And the whole grain wheat, it helps keep blood sugar spikes down, more fiber. It's better for you, slower to digest. It can be cumbersome to deal with, and trying to get kids to eat that food when they're not used to eating it. That's the other thing, is to get kids who put up barriers.
Yeah, we put out the call this week to local school districts. Obviously, you were able to be here with us today. We'll hear from Toledo Public, Bedford, also Washington Local Schools, some of our bigger districts in the area. One of the things that grabbed my attention this week in hearing about this discussion is the fact that schools are saying that kids, and we've heard this since it was implemented, since the First Lady came out with this proposal, it was that kids don't want the healthier foods. Kids aren't interested in eating the healthier foods. And in fact, there are districts around the country, larger districts, when you're talking some major metropolitan areas, where schools have actually started to implement programs with food kitchens or soup kitchens because they've got so much waste. Are you seeing that in Sylvania?
Definitely not seeing that where we're at. It's a habit, it's a lifestyle, and I think if you put fresh fruits and vegetables, if you put whole grains out, if you teach students how to eat balanced meals and model that for them, I think that they're okay with it. The fresh fruits and vegetables, a big push that we did in Sylvania schools. We have fresh fruits and vegetables that can be delivered daily from local producers. Kids love whole, fresh fruits.
They do.
And having that choice and that selection. So
you're not seeing the waste.
I'm not seeing the waste like that. We control very closely the foods that we prepare, and so the waste is not a huge factor for us. Again, whole fresh fruits can be brought out and put into cooling units and returned back very easily. Apples are very hardy. Bananas are a little bit less so, but oranges, we serve hardier fruits and vegetables.
There have been a lot of arguments out there saying that if you want to make sure that these kids are getting healthy meals, if parents want to be in control, then we should move to a brown bag society as far as these kids taking their lunch every day and making sure that what they have, what they need is there. Not putting the financial burden, the costs on the government, on the state, and ultimately on the schools. What do you say to that?
I say that schools are doing a great job with providing nutritional lunches for kids. The convenience products and foods that are provided to us now are fantastic. We supplement those items with fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh milk every day. What I think parents need to do is support their schools and send kids to school with lunch money and let them eat at school. And then support it at home also with habits that model that balanced approach to eating, making sure that fruits, vegetables, grains, milks, and the proteins are involved in quantities that are appropriate. By supporting your schools with these initiatives through modeling it at home and sending your kids to eat at school, they're going to get healthier and they're going to get used to eating the fruits and vegetables and becoming satisfied and full rather than having to eat 3 cheeseburgers to be full.
In talking with your communications director before we started here today, she was telling me that one of the growing markets, if you will, for kids going to school is breakfast.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that. I mean, over the last how many years have you seen breakfast being a real emphasis for? Because when I went to school, nobody was there at breakfast time, and I was there especially early for the athletics. It was just a ghost town in the morning hours, but lunch was always the key. Now you're saying breakfast is that growing market, that trend.
Breakfast is a huge, huge market. Being a former Bob Evans manager, I also love breakfast. And I can tell you right now that when a child is hungry, they cannot focus on academics. And they cannot focus in the classroom. It is extremely important that children get breakfast before they start the educational day. And some households cannot provide that breakfast. So at Sylvania schools, we make sure that kids have breakfast in our schools, and have that good start.
Is that
It's growing, it's huge.
Specifically talk about the hours that's available. I mean, break it down simplicity for us. When kids are able to come in, get breakfast, head to class, and then obviously you're switching gears and focusing on lunch, just like a regular restaurant operation. In fact, Sylvania Schools at one time had a student-run restaurant operation going out of it when you guys had more of a culinary focus at one time.
Yes, I believe they did out at Northview.
Northview,
I
yeah.
It was called a Golden Chandelier.
Yes.
Such as that.
So, I mean, that's obviously an emphasis. But talk about kids are available to go in get breakfast. What are their selections?
The schools that we have breakfast at would be Stranahan and Sylvan and Maplewood, and
Not at the high schools.
at both high schools,
both high schools.
at Northview and Southview,
Okay.
and then also at Arbor Hills.
Okay.
We have breakfast, and you can come in before class, half an hour before class at the high schools, 15 to 20 minutes before class when they're getting off the bus. A lot of times they'll go in and we'll have a wide variety of fruits and grains and milks. And next year we're going to be expanding this program and really offering more selections, definitely at the high school and also at the elementary and junior high. It's a huge focus for Sylvania Schools.
When you guys were approached with this and these standards and having to meet all of these benchmarks, and you're down in Columbus meeting with all of the other school districts, what was one of the sticking points for, I mean, collectively, when you hear problems that districts are having with these standards, what were they saying?
The big problem, the big focus of everyone, and one of the big issues that comes up is how do you balance everything that we have to balance from cost perspective? How do you build participation? It's very expensive to serve fresh fruits and vegetables, and the only way that we can survive is if parents support us. If they send their kids to school with lunch money and support their schools through lunches.
Okay.
You can't make at home and send some of the foods that we send for the same amount of money. We get federal reimbursement dollars from the government in support of our meals. The best way to do it is to support your schools, is to have them come and get the fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. And at the elementary, it's $2.50 for meals.
But to play devil's advocate, you know that parents, a lot of families out there, let's put it that way, a lot of families out there cannot afford to have their kids eat at school every single day.
That's true. That's true. We have assistance for families that need help, and also it is very expensive also to go to the store and to put together lunches to pack and to send as well.
But you're out there advancing quality over quantity.
Absolutely, definitely, making sure that kids have a choice, because it's offer versus serve. We don't serve a plate with 5 items.
Yeah.
They can take what they'll eat, and they can take as many fruits and vegetables as they would like. If a child would like to have cauliflower, broccoli, and carrots, we let them take all 3 items.
We had a couple of pictures I wanted to go to. You had some of your workers showing off. You said you guys receive hummus from Beirut here locally in Toledo. Now, I've got an almost 8-year-old. I've got an almost 10-year-old at home, and the 8-year-old is an absolute challenge with trying things. I cannot do it for the life of me. And Dugan, if you're at home, you know I'm talking about you. But from the standpoint of getting a kid to try hummus, I mean, and you're telling me there's no waste when you bring these things in, but how do you convince being open, open-minded, an open-minded adolescent to trying new things, especially at lunchtime?
It's very hard to. It's very
You're chomping
difficult.
at the bit to
I'm
answer
telling
this.
you right now, it's very difficult to bring these items into your home.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to bring items in for children to try. But when you send them to school, we can chop up little pieces of vegetables and give them tests of the hummus. Madeline, my daughter's called the hummus shark because she loves it so much, and they can try the hummus and they find out how much they like it, and then it encourages them to eat more vegetables. You'd be surprised how many of the students in Sylvania schools did not have hummus, who tried it and they love it, and now they're eating more vegetables as a result. We buy twice as many vegetables as we used to. Because kids are eating them.
I want to go
to elementary kids
Right.
in kindergarten are eating salads.
It's all starting the education on food early and then continuing through life.
Absolutely.
A couple of the comments we got from other school districts, I wanted to put those out. Patty Mazur, Communications Director for Toledo Public, they were not able to be here today, but wanted to send across the fact that she says, we follow the state and federal mandates. We are not seeing the waste issues, she says. We offered taste testing across the district last year, allowing students to have a say in this year's menu offerings. You guys, you kind of alluded to the same kind of thing, yes?
Absolutely. Communication's the key. Make no mistake, our kids are our customers. And we have to treat them like customers. So we talk to them, we're in tune with them, we ask them what they want, and then we help to guide those nutritional decisions by giving them what they want and also what they need.
Washington Local, Patrick Hickey, Superintendent of Washington Local, sending us another statement saying, in terms of lunches and breakfasts, 57%, he says, of our kids live in poverty. And he says, I do not foresee a day when we do not provide these meals. He said, I believe many of our kids depend on these meals to sustain themselves. A real commentary there on the economy, where we see things, but saying that they need to provide these meals.
Absolutely. The need is there. It's very great. The federal programs are set up to help students and to make sure they get free breakfast and free lunch. If you get a free lunch, you also get a free breakfast every day. So they can send their students and make sure that they're getting healthy, balanced meals. I agree with Mr. Hickey. It's not going anywhere. There's too great of a need.
Also, we heard from Bedford Public Schools, Edward Manuzik, sending us this. He said, by federal and state guidelines, we must provide a school lunch and breakfast option. Our current plan is to abide by the guidelines that are set forth by the state and federal government. So right there, and he went on in this statement to say he had stopped by a couple of school buildings that day, in fact, when they sent this across, and just talking to what you alluded to, the fact that fresh fruits and veggies were available for the kids. They're always out there.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day we have salads in every school. We have fresh fruits, whole fresh fruits and vegetables every day in every school. Some of these children may not even see fresh vegetables at the house.
Joe,
stay
stay right there. We have got more on the other side of this break. We'll be right back on the Roundtable right after this.